for years I was scripting my life and living very comfortably but delusional. And I found comfort in being delusional. And I mean, being delusional was an issue when you were doing it the way I was doing it. You know, you got all of these big ideas and big thoughts, but you don't have the receipts to back it up. And I think a lot of it came down to getting out of college, where I got my first job doing gardening. And the boss that I worked for, he was a great guy. Had his own little business. He had his head screwed on, and it was good for me coming out of college. And in that lockdown period, I was still around people, still working. And he gave me a good kind of, mentorship at that age. And it gave me a good structure to kind of understand how to work well, how to do a thorough job of something. So it gave me the good tools to start off with. And I then got into crypto, and this was all it's when it was on its kind of second phase. Like I think 2017, it had a big run, and then 2020, it was kind of on the verge of becoming mainstream, but it was still early. So there was a lot of hype around, you're still early, there's still massive growth. And I mean, there was, and at that age, I went from around 2,000 up to £8,000, and that was like massive at the time, especially coming out of college and never making any real money at all. So it gave me a big kind of boost that I could maybe do something. At that age, it gave me that kind of confidence to be a bit more entrepreneurial. But I then lost it all, and then it felt like at that age I'd lost everything, and I became very down and just negative about life. And this was all through COVID times, and then a lot of my life was lived through a phone screen, YouTube, and life became very digitized, and it became like scripting life before living it. That's how I found myself. And it then turned into anxiety, and it turned into sophisticated procrastination. It felt like, watching podcasts and doing all of the perimeter work around the edges was getting in the water and actually doing it. And I fell into that trap without realizing, and for quite a long time. But what it took was understanding that the whole social media thing was a massive lie, and it was actually trying to make you think it's acceptable to divert around the grunt and the pain it does take to make something of yourself. Really putting yourself through hard situations, hard jobs, getting talked to like shit, the way it's been since the dawn of time. Social media has definitely warped that. And it took, at the end of it, it took real experiences. It took a really shitty jobs, like the warehouse job, getting dumped, to then living up in Bristol doing a sales job. And living those experiences that are real were the thing that was building up my mindset and my resilience all along. But I was only conscious of the perimeter stuff like podcasts. I thought that was the way out. But slowly over time, I started accepting that living your life truly is the way out, and the way you do discover what you are made of. And that discovery is what's going to be the foundation and the rock to keep you strong when things get hard, and it stops you from giving up. Before moving up to Bristol and living alone for a year, I was doing a lot of overcompensating, trying to live the life or pretend like I was living a better lifestyle than I was without actually having any receipts to show for it, because I was just, like the thing with social media, I was falling into that trap that kind of warps reality into thinking that you can do it in reverse without the hard work that goes into true success. And after the warehouse job finished, and it felt like I'd gone backwards money wise as well, because at that age I was making 2,500 a month. I thought it was all quite good. I was trying to go traveling, kind of fell flat on my face again, and it felt like a big setback. And my boss was kind of the polar opposite of the one that I had before. He was kind of showing me what it looks like if you don't take your time now serious enough, and how that building up to the future can then turn into massive regret of the past. And this guy was a spitting image of that, and he was very silently desperate and frustrated. He was perverted, and he'd try and get me in on these weird jokes he'd pull. I mean, it got super strange when he told me that he'd had a dream about having a moment with his mother. And I just thought and then he cracked the joke like I was gonna go, oh yeah mate, yeah I remember that as well, like it was some kind of, like it was funny. And he was just always like, a girl would walk past and like he'd be driving, he'd be like and he'd be like, you see that? And I'd just be like, yeah, like just get me home, it's been a long day. Because that was like, the job was kind of humouring him and doing the work as well. So that was a interesting situation, just how bad it can get if you don't kind of lock in. Not good. And he was always like, back in my day, like, oh, I was massive, I was jacked, I was this. And he was living in the past. But it's sad, but he was a nice guy at the end of the day. But yeah, just interesting dynamic between the two. I was then up in Bristol. I was having quite a difficult living situation. I mean, the guy was a bit of a smart ass, and everything was a battle between, it was tit for tat. It was quite mentally exhausting. I'd left my job, so it felt like things were kind of falling apart. And the one thing I did at that time, and the best decision I made, was just to go, right, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I need to get my confidence back, because it feels pretty shattered right now. So I just thought, I need to show myself that I can do something hard and see it through. And that's when I ran a marathon, and I trained every day. Didn't make it complicated, just started with 5k, got to 6, 7, went up to 9, etc. Just built it up as I went, and just pushed myself when it felt right. And that was a super pivotal moment in just getting myself back on track and getting out of that calamity. That really cut through the shit, and it worked. And that was then what led me then thinking about personal training and going down this career and going down that kind of path. So it was a massive help at that time. Life doesn't happen on a screen. It doesn't happen from trying to live other people's lives. Genuinely going out every day and trying, and just trying to chisel away, and it gets clearer and clearer.